Hello, my name is Anthony Blomfield. I'm the Head of Mathematics here at Parramatta Marist High School. Welcome to PBL World Australia. If you're watching this video, then you'll be ready for our PBL and Maths bootcamp session on Wednesday afternoon, the 13th of November. I look forward to meeting with you, and my team look forward to that as well. There's loads of information I could provide to you in a bootcamp session, and that would easily take an hour. When I go to a workshop, what I want to do is walk away with something tangible. So my intention for that workshop is to sit with you and work with you to develop actual problems that you can take back to your classroom the following week and beyond. So I'm inviting you to watch this video presentation in which I'll describe what we've done and what we've learned here at Parramatta over the past 2 years. So the intention of what I'll describe to you is to explain the differences and the similarities between problem-based and project-based learning here at Parramatta, to present the framework in which we develop our problem units of work, to provide an example of our problem units and some of the student work that they've prepared, and to share with you some of the lessons that we've learned over the past 12 months in particular. So if you have any questions or comments or suggestions about any of the material in this presentation or during our workshop, you're welcome to ask. And that includes beyond our conference if you'd like to contact me here at the school. So I hope you find this presentation informative, and I trust you enjoy your experience at PBL World Australia. Project-based learning has at its core an idea where the students have a driving question to work with. And that question is usually engaging throughout a 5 week period to a full term. Any mathematics scope and sequence that I've worked with, however, has many short units of work, 2 weeks and 3 weeks, which makes it very difficult to run holistic projects in the way that we've perceived projects. So our experience suggests that problem-based learning is a much more effective way to work through the syllabus, where the problems are a series of smaller chunks, where we might have a number of problems, maybe independent in theme, but that run through and match across one or a number of bullet points within the syllabus, making sure that we cover everything as we go. The problems therefore might be just a short activity, maybe half an hour, through to a 2 or 3 period type problem. So let's have a look at an example. In this short clip, just one of the smaller problems that we have embedded into the problem units in our maths programs. So this is one on time, and the problem is simply this. The boys have been asked to go to Trip Planner and plan a trip from Westmead to a given destination. And then they've got to answer a few questions, and basically it's about organising a timetable for a day's events. A couple of things before I show you the website. There's a balance between open-endedness and just planning any trip, and sometimes you might have a specific target for the problem. In this case, what I wanted to do was to give the boys a range of destinations that they could choose, but all of those destinations involved 2 modes of transport. And I wanted that to happen because I wanted them to consider and use the beginning and ending time of the first leg of that journey, and then the beginning and ending times of the second leg of the journey. I just didn't want them to, catch a train 1 station down to Parramatta. That would defeat the objective of the task. So a range of things, and some of those things, for example, might have included catching a train and a bus to Luna Park. So you can make up venues that might be of interest to the boys, but in this case it's a little bit more directed than completely open-ended. So they've been asked to go to this Trip Planner site. So I'll just show you briefly the Trip Planner site, which is here. Now it does a lot of the work for them, but there's 2 aspects to this, and we go back to our 6 A's rubric, and part of this problem is real life application, where many of our students, particularly Year 7 students, will never have seen or used this type of site. So there's a learning element in terms of
of the site, and potentially they might use this next weekend when they go out. So without going through the whole site, you can identify where you're going from and to, and it'll provide you with the modes of transport. And part of the problem unit would also have been then to add up the total travel time. And again, it's an addition of time and planning of time from the syllabus bullet points. This would only take maybe half an hour or so to conduct, and another 10 minutes to probably choose 3 or 4 students to demonstrate their work and demonstrate their answers to the class. So just a shorter problem. Of course, you'd follow this up with maybe bookwork or worksheets or something then to drill the mathematical technique and skill. But here's the starting point for learning and engaging in some of the time-based syllabus outcomes.
Before I go any further, I'll clarify a few terms and acronyms that you'll hear through this presentation. From this point forward, when I talk about PBL, I'm actually talking about maths problem-based learning. And also when I speak about problem units, I'm talking about what's typically a topic of maths, or what we might see as a chapter in a textbook. Another point of clarification is reference to the NTN, or the New Tech Network. New Tech is an organisation in the United States. It's a non-profit organisation. It's a membership organisation of which Parramatta Marist is a member. We have adopted their guidelines, their PBL guidelines, their framework, and their learning management system called ECHO for use at our school. If you'd like more information about the New Tech Network and the services and membership that they provide, please feel free to ask. The most challenging aspect of both problem-based and project-based learning is designing a good problem that's engaging, open-ended, and links closely with the syllabus outcomes. In our Year 9 and 10, in our Stage 5.1 and 5.2 courses, there's much more scope for projects and problems because the timeline is not quite as compact. For the advanced classes and also for Year 7 and 8, our Stage 4, timeframes are quite tight and a much narrower focus of problems is required. The problem units at Parramatta Marist are developed with a framework that's very similar to project development. The key with all our problem or project development is to begin with the end in mind. From a practical perspective, the first decision we've got to make is whether we're running a project or a problem. There's not a major difference once you get into the guts of the work, but there are different beginning and ending points for problems versus projects. Before a project or a problem unit is developed, with all its content, its scaffolds, its tasks and assessments, the idea itself should be checked against a project rubric. And this rubric we call the 6A rubric.
If I consider the trip planner problem that we ran and I demonstrated earlier, well, there was no assessment particularly on that problem. It's only a small problem, maybe half an hour or so. But there'd be elements certainly in all of these categories where we could check to make sure that from a problem perspective it's an acceptable sort of project. So I'm going to zoom in here and just look at one of the particular areas. So if we look at applied learning in the middle, you can see that if it's not meeting criteria, then hopefully that should be reasonably clear. But if we look at the acceptable first, are there new skills and knowledge applied? Yes, they've gone onto a website. Now they've been told where to go. However, they're using a site for the first time. Were they required to work in groups? You could potentially do this in groups, but for me this was an individual activity, and some self-management skills. And essentially, self-management is give them 10 minutes or 20 minutes and they have to produce their own itinerary and record in a mathematically accurate but also practical way the parts of the journey. Beyond acceptable, what we call exemplary, we're looking for students to apply new knowledge to realistic. Well, certainly it's new knowledge and it's a realistic situation. Complex, well, limited. And again, in a half-hour problem, we're not going to always, very often, hit this exemplary where we're really looking to open up problems and provide as much scope for creativity and decision making of the students as we can. So what this rubric does then is just provide us with a framework to check, and really it's about making sure the problems are going to hold some academic rigour. One of the difficult bits is getting the adult connections consistently, and in small problems like that, it's a very difficult thing to achieve. There's a number of times when I've found myself developing a problem that ends up looking like a worksheet. So you create a scenario and there's a list of 10 questions to answer. And of course that's not open learning, it's not an open activity. And the rubric really enables us, or me, to come back and say, okay, so where does this problem sit, and does it meet, well, the majority of these acceptable outcomes for a good problem. So there's our 6A's rubric and the way in which we use it.
There's also another objective of PBL pedagogy beyond just teaching the syllabus outcomes. A key aim of PBL is to develop in our students skills and abilities in a range of competencies. The new Australian curriculum document explicitly identified a range of general capabilities called general competencies.
At Parramatta Marist, we refer to these skills as school-wide learning outcomes. All projects and problem units for all faculty areas are required to measure and assess a student's performance in literacy and numeracy, creative and critical thinking, group work, presentations, and work ethic. This is done by marking observations and/or student and staff evaluations of tasks, presentations, group work, or assignments. We also report on these capabilities along with the academic outcomes in each reporting period to students and their parents. To quote from the ACARA website, the general capabilities encompass the knowledge, skills, behaviours and dispositions that, together with curriculum content in each learning area and the cross-curriculum priorities, will assist students to live and work successfully in the 21st century.
Having looked at some of the concepts and theory of problem-based and project-based learning that we're using here at Parramatta, let's have a look at some work that has been produced by some of our students. I'm going to cheat a little bit and show you and include in here a production that I did earlier this year for a presentation. It's a presentation of student work and their response to the project in data representation and analysis. And our question was, what's on the mind of Year 7 students at Parramatta Marist High School?
And welcome to a very quick presentation on project-based learning and its place in our numeracy strategy here at Parramatta. During Term 3, the Year 7 students completed the data strand as a project, and I'm going to show you a series of screenshots and internet screens that show you what we did, how we did it, and a work sample of what some of the boys did. The project entry looks like this. So the question simply was posed, what's on the mind of Parramatta students here in Year 7? So what we have here is an example of an open-ended question. The boys were not restricted in terms of the topics they chose, but simply to generate a questionnaire that considered any topic they like. What are Year 7 students thinking about gaming, sport, and there's a fascinating list of topics that the boys chose to investigate. So student choice, and sometimes called student voice, is an important part of our PBL. The rubric then is an important part to make sure the boys understand what's going on And without going through this in detail, this rubric, which really is the same as understanding by design, really has to consider what outcomes and what tasks am I assessing in this syllabus, and how am I going to do that in the project itself. In particular, if you can see my cursor here, the product that the boys had to produce was either in print or electronic form. So we're not forcing them to do any particular style of presentation, and again, they've got a choice on how they might do that. Okay, so to an example, and one of the boys' groups, and this is working in groups, created a website which showed, which reported on all the aspects of data. So the survey was a YouTube question, well, it was a questionnaire on YouTube, but done through Google Forms. What we also then got to do was have a look at the results, and all these results is in a Google spreadsheet, which I'll talk about a bit later. So then, next what the boys had to do is graphically represent their data, and here's an example of, a lot of these graphs that they produced and analysed from their data were produced automatically by Google spreadsheets, with the exception of the stem and leaf plot. You can see the interpretation of stem and leaf plot is interesting. So this line here is 8 hours and 6 minutes and 9 seconds. That's a very exact amount of time for a student to record as having watched YouTube during a week. And we see, okay, this student here has said there's 72 hours worth of YouTube watching during a week, which in itself is an example of students having to analyse that aspect of the data and figure out what that really means. And going back to their website then, looking through, here's each of these links provided a PDF download, including mean, median, and mode, and then they were asked to write a short conclusion. So in summary, an open-ended task, which is supported by rubrics, gives great opportunity for the boys to explore, a rubric to direct the boys on how to do things and what to do things, and how they're going to be assessed on those topics. So there's an example of project-based learning. To summarise the project problems that we've just looked at, NewTech have developed a framework and a diagram that broadly encapsulates the difference between problem and project-based learning. Whatever you want to call it, the beginning of this work is a problem where students are trying to figure out what to do. Because student voice is such an important part of problem and project-based learning, I've invited a number of our Year 7 students to give us their perspective on the problems they've seen this year in mathematics.
Albert's math project was the data one, because we had to make graphs of different surveys, and it was fun graphing the data that we collected from our surveys.
Yes.
My favourite project was data, because you could survey your friends on what they like video games or YouTube videos, so you found out more about them.
Yeah, my favourite project was the data project as well. It was the first main project for maths we got to work as a group to complete it in a PowerPoint or a website, something like that. And I feel that really let us work to our full potential.
Working in groups was a bit hard to start off with, because we didn't really know anyone, and we had to work with people we'd never worked before. We didn't know anyone what they're good at and what they're not good at, so yeah, that was what was difficult.
Yep.
Working with groups is kind of harder, because if you have an idea and you think it's really good but your group don't want to work with it, it's hard because you really thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, I thought using the iPads was a bit hard at the start of the year, also with teamwork, because you get easily distracted by the iPad, but once you work with it well and you understand what its actual tool is, same with group work, how you learn to understand working as a group and cooperating together and getting full potential out of your group, and the iPad works well after a while.
Maybe being able to sort of choose your group, so you could pick people in a group that had different strengths. So one person would be good at technology, one person would be good at maths and something like that. So they all came together to make one really good project.
Yep.
Yeah, I think in maths we could change, because this year we only did one project as a group. I think we should do more projects as groups and less singular just on Echo. I think it helps us understand things better.
As we've progressed with developing and designing and implementing our problems, the method in which we've done it has significantly changed over the past 12 months. The way in which we frame questions and develop the questions is much more consistent, which enables us to roll out the problems in a much more consistent manner, both in terms of the staff developing and presenting those problems, as well as the students' engagement in their problems and a consistency across the different classrooms as different teachers take boys through these problems. With all the talk about problem-based learning in the classroom, you might be wondering, is there a role for textbooks or direct instruction in PBL? And the answer is yes, but it comes from a different point. With our problems, the beginning is the unknown. Trying to construct a problem and present a problem where the boys aren't really sure what's going on. Create that need for learning. Of course, there'll be students in your classroom who know where we're going, who know what they should be doing. And so the teaching becomes a little bit different. Start with a problem and let them grapple with that problem for a while, and there'll be students who understand what's going on and then become peer teachers in their groups. So my job then becomes to listen into those conversations and make sure a couple of things, that the students are explaining the concepts correctly, but also to ask probing questions and explore, not only for the student who's describing the work, but also the students who are listening to the description, ensure that they have a thorough understanding of what's going on and really extend them where the opportunity arises. From that point, then we're looking at providing the students with maybe a summary lesson. So this is what you should have found. So instead of beginning with the work, we end with the summary of the work. And then of course, with all mathematics, it's important that the students have the opportunity then to work through a number of problems, or what we would have called skill and drill, and that's where the textbooks come in. So the textbook still provides that basis on which to build the skills for students as they learn and apply the knowledge that they've discussed through the problem-based learning. Almost every teacher at some point will have conducted some sort of project-based learning or problem-based learning exercise. Let's get the dice out and roll it and see how long it takes to get a double six. Let's measure the tree height in the playground. So none of this is groundbreaking and new. The challenge for PBL is to encompass the entire syllabus and the content as we move through it, frame in a range, a series of problems that students can engage in. So there's a big shift in terms of preparation and delivery of our syllabus in that case. So staff have to, well, there's a couple of things staff need to learn how to do. They have to learn how to link real-world problems to the syllabus outcomes that we're working with. Try and make it engaging for students. And the other challenge within that is to make the problems relevant to the students themselves and not just us as adults. Talk less, control less, teach less, but facilitate more, listen more, and ask questions more. Staff will have to work together to develop problems, to critique each other's problems, and make sure that they make sense to other people, and make sense to a student at whatever age level that student might be. And provide that criticism or that critique constructively. And we use a framework in which to make sure that the critique is done effectively. So it's worthwhile hearing from one of our teaching staff about their experience of PBL so far this year.
Hi, my name is Rosie Espedito and I'm a maths teacher here at Parramatta Marist and have been lucky enough to see the implementation of problem-based learning for maths. And if we're to describe problem-based learning in just a sentence or two, I'd really think it's the opportunity for students to apply content to authentic tasks, and it allows students to engage with content and challenges students more than a traditional textbook approach would. And I really think that problem-based learning aims to develop the problem-solving strategies in students and to make the learning meaningful while being student-centered. In thinking about the benefits that we have in the classroom due to problem-based learning, I think number one is confidence. Maths is traditionally an area where students struggle with being confident and, dare I say, don't enjoy coming to class sometimes. However, with problem-based learning, it's not sitting there having to do question after question out of the textbook. It's using different strengths. They're integrating skills from a lot of different areas to solve problems. So just because a student may not be great at content, they may have other things to contribute to the group, like computer skills, team management. So I think that I see students become confident because they realise their skills are valued and their contribution to the group is valued, and they can help other students. Aside from the content, they can help them with those other skills that they're building in the classroom. And I really, really love seeing students help each other, and the benefit of students helping each other is that I'm not doing it and they're speaking in a language they understand, therefore making content meaningful and continuing to build skills. In considering what has changed in my classroom and my teaching practice, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that problem-based learning has allowed me to greatly differentiate in the classroom and work more closely with individuals. It's also enabled me to have what we call a workshop approach, where we can ask students who doesn't feel so confident with the work, and we can work with them more closely while the remaining students go on and do their research towards the ultimate end product or towards the solution to the problem. I also feel like my role has evolved a lot. I'm not a teacher anymore. I barely do any explicit teaching up the front. Rather, I teach to the needs of the students and I facilitate their individual needs on the group level. So one group might be blazing ahead and they don't need me so much. However, another group may need a little bit more explicit instruction. So rather than teach to the middle in the front of the classroom, I go from group to group, and this allows me to, one, get to know the students and really target what they're having trouble with and build on the skills.
So where to next at Parramatta Marist with our problem-based learning? Well, there's a number of targets that we'd aim for over the next 12 months. First is the refinement and continued development of our Year 7 and 8 problems, tightening them up, making sure that they're meeting the new syllabus outcomes of the Australian curriculum and that they flow well in the classroom. The second one is looking for opportunities to roll problem-based learning through years 9 and 10, and particularly at the stages 5.1 and 5.2 courses, where there's more opportunity in terms of time to engage in some problem-based learning. There's better integration with the school-wide learning outcomes in our problems, making sure that every problem assesses one or two of those school-wide learning outcomes right throughout the year, and that we can present at the end of the year a good overall picture of skills and knowledge learned and competencies in that school-wide learning outcome framework. Well, congratulations. You've just sat through possibly your first flipped class lesson in PBL. I hope you found it engaging and interesting. Of course, the benefit with the past videos is that you can fast forward through the boring bits rewatch the interesting bits, and if at any stage you're overloaded, pause and consider what's been said. So, of course, the challenge now is to move out and develop problems. And problems aren't always easy to come by. But, as I've found over the past 12 months, the more you're alert to problems out and around you, the more you'll be able to see them and make links with the syllabus and ultimately with the students in your classrooms and get them engaged and working in a real life situation. So I hope you enjoy PBL World Australia, and it's a fruitful and interesting time for you. Thanks for watching this video, and good luck in the mathematics classroom.